Right now, inside your body, there's a code that is older than every pyramid, every language, and every city ever built by human hands. It is not stored in a book. It is not written on any wall. It is carried inside a red liquid that moves through your veins every second of your life, and most people never stop to think about it. If your blood type is O positive, that code belongs to you, and scientists are only now starting to understand what it actually means. Almost everyone has filled out a form that asks for their blood type. Most people write it down the same way they write down their shoe size, as if it is just another random detail about their body. But your blood type is not random at all. It is one of the oldest pieces of information your body carries, and it says more about where you came from than almost anything else in your DNA. Here is something most people never learn in school. The letters A, B, and O, and the plus or minus sign next to them, are not modern labels invented by doctors. They are markers of a genetic system that has existed inside primates for roughly 20 million years. 20 million years is such a long stretch of time that it is almost impossible to picture. Entire mountain ranges have risen and worn down again in less time. And yet this blood system has stayed active and important the whole way through, passed down generation after generation, species after species, all the way to you. When something survives that long inside living bodies without disappearing, biologists pay very close attention. Nature does not hold on to useless things. Traits that stop being useful tend to fade out over time. So the fact that this blood system is still here, still working, still shaping human health today, tells scientists it must be doing something essential, something worth protecting across millions of years of change. Now here is where it gets more specific for people with O blood. Out of all the blood types, O is believed to be the oldest. Type A and Type B came later, shaped by shifting climates, new diseases, and populations spreading into new lands. O came first. It is the starting point, the base model that other blood types eventually built on top of. That matters because it means O blood carries the imprint of the harshest, earliest chapters of human survival, back when life was brutally unforgiving, and every small biological advantage decided who lived long enough to have children. To understand why this matters for your health, we need to zoom in on what is actually happening at the surface of your blood cells. Every red blood cell in your body is covered in tiny protein and sugar markers. Think of them as ID tags. Your immune system reads these tags constantly, all day, every day, trying to figure out what belongs inside your body and what might be a threat. This reading process never stops, not even while you sleep. What makes O blood different is really about what it is missing. A and B blood types carry extra sugar molecules built on top of a base structure called the H antigen. O blood keeps that base structure plain without the extra additions. That is exactly why O blood is known as the universal donor. It does not carry the extra markers that could trigger a dangerous reaction in someone else's body. In a very real sense, O blood is the raw, unedited version, and A and B are modified versions built on top of it. This single fact has become one of the most exciting areas in modern medicine. Right now, researchers are experimenting with special enzymes that can strip away the extra sugar markers from A and B blood cells, turning them into something that behaves like O blood. If this process becomes reliable at a large scale, it could ease the constant shortage of donor blood in hospitals everywhere. Think about what that really means. The world's most advanced blood scientists, using cutting-edge lab tools, are chasing a goal that your body has already achieved naturally, without any lab equipment at all. But O blood is not just a technical curiosity for scientists. It is tied closely to how your entire body functions, from your heart to your immune defenses. And let's start with the heart, because the research here is genuinely striking. People with O blood tend to have a lower risk of certain heart problems compared to people with A, B, or AB blood. Part of the reason comes down to two substances in the blood called clotting factor 8 and von Willebrand factor. These two proteins help blood clot, which is useful when you get a cut, but dangerous when clots form inside your arteries without warning. People with O blood typically carry lower levels of both of these clotting proteins. That means a naturally reduced tendency toward the kind of clots that can trigger heart attacks and strokes. This is not something you earned through diet or exercise. It is something written directly into your genetic code, inherited from ancestors who happen to carry a slight biological edge that helped them survive dangerous moments. But no blood type gets to have it all. Every advantage tends to come with a trade-off, and O blood is no exception. Research has linked O blood to a somewhat higher chance of developing stomach ulcers, and some studies have connected it to a higher risk of certain digestive cancers. It has also historically shown more vulnerability to certain infections, including cholera. This is not a flaw or a weakness in the design. It is simply how evolution works. Every blood type carries a unique mix of strengths and weaknesses, shaped by whatever dangers were most common in the environment where your ancestors lived. Nobody wins on every front. Understanding your specific mix, based on real evidence, is far more useful than pretending any blood type is perfect. And this is where the story becomes genuinely fascinating, because the weaknesses and strengths of O blood are not random either. They form a pattern, and that pattern is basically a map of what your ancestors were fighting for survival. Take malaria. This disease has killed more humans throughout history than almost any other illness, and it remains a massive threat in many parts of the world today. The parasite behind malaria has a much harder time attaching to O-type red blood cells compared to other blood types. That difference is not small. It gave people with O blood a real survival edge in regions where malaria was common, which is a big part of why O blood became so widespread across large areas of Africa, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. This is natural selection playing out in front of us, visible in blood type statistics collected from real populations today. Your ancestors who survived malaria outbreaks were more likely to pass their genes forward, and if their blood happened to be type O, that trait spread through entire communities over time. For most of human history, this kind of evolutionary story could only be pieced together indirectly by studying living populations and guessing backward. Scientists could not travel back in time to check the blood of ancient humans. That has changed. Modern labs can now extract and read genetic material straight from bones that are tens of thousands of years old, which means researchers can trace the real history of blood type evolution instead of just theorizing about it. One of the newest and most detailed studies in this field looked at ancient genetic material from 22 Homo sapiens who lived somewhere between 46,000 and 16,500 years ago, along with 14 Neanderthals from roughly 120,000 to 40,000 years ago, and one individual from about 98,000 years ago, believed to be a mix of Neanderthal and Denisovan ancestry. This is not guesswork. This is direct genetic evidence pulled from ancient remains. What the researchers found was surprising even to them. Blood type genetics did not evolve slowly and evenly across the whole human population. It moved in bursts, shaped heavily by specific environments as groups of early humans pushed into new territory. As Homo sapiens left Africa somewhere between 70,000 and 45,000 years ago and began spreading across Eurasia, new blood group variations appeared and locked into these traveling populations surprisingly fast. Nearly every ancient individual studied carried a unique combination of blood variants, which caught scientists off guard, because that level of rapid change was not expected over such a relatively short evolutionary window. One especially interesting detail from this research points to the Persian Plateau, a stretch of land between the Zagros Mountains and modern-day Iran. Evidence suggests that groups of early humans paused there for roughly 15,000 years during their long migration out of Africa. 15,000 years is more than enough time for meaningful genetic change to take hold. Researchers now believe this region acted almost like a natural testing ground, where new blood-related gene variants, including changes tied to the Rh factor, formed and became locked into the population before people continued spreading into the rest of Eurasia. Some of these new Rh gene variants would later travel with different groups into Europe, while others eventually disappeared as certain lineages died out. Interestingly, the same research found that Neanderthals, who mostly stayed more isolated, kept a narrower and more unchanging set of Rh blood variants across 80,000 years. And some scientists now think that lack of genetic flexibility may have made it harder for Neanderthal populations to adapt when conditions shifted, possibly contributing to their extinction. This is not distant, disconnected history. The genetic groundwork laid down in that region tens of thousands of years ago is still active inside human bodies right now, still shaping how immune systems respond to threats, still influencing cardiovascular risk, still running quietly in the background of daily life. The only real difference is that today, for the first time, scientists actually have the tools to read these ancient instructions in fine detail. And the discoveries have not slowed down. If anything, they are speeding up. In 2024, researchers in the United Kingdom and Israel finally solved a genetic mystery that started all the way back in 1972, when doctors noticed a pregnant woman's blood was missing a molecule found on almost every other known red blood cell. It took nearly 20 years of dedicated investigation to fully explain what was going on, and the answer turned out to be an entirely new blood group system, now known as the MAL system. One of the researchers involved called it one of the biggest achievements of her career, the result of chasing an unexplained anomaly for 2 decades before finally cracking it. Then, in the middle of 2025, an even more dramatic case made headlines. French scientists at the National Blood Service identified a woman from Guadeloupe as the only known person on Earth with a completely new blood type, now called Guada negative. Her case had actually been sitting unsolved since 2011, when doctors first realized her plasma reacted against blood samples from every single donor they tested, meaning she was essentially incompatible with the entire donor population. It took years of deeper genetic analysis to figure out why. In June 2025, the International Society of Blood Transfusion officially confirmed it as the 48th recognized human blood group system, naming the underlying gene PIGZ. As of today, she remains the only known person in the world carrying it. Every one of these discoveries adds another layer to what scientists understand about the wider blood type map that O positive belongs to. And the pace of discovery keeps climbing, thanks largely to how much cheaper and faster DNA sequencing has become in just the last few years. Now let's talk about something almost everyone lived through together, the COVID-19 pandemic, because it accidentally became one of the largest natural experiments in blood type research ever recorded. Billions of people were exposed to the same virus in different countries, with decades of existing blood type data ready to compare against. Multiple studies during that period found that people with O blood, along with people who are Rh negative, appeared to have a somewhat lower chance of testing positive for the virus in the first place, and tended to face a reduced risk of the most severe vascular complications when they did get infected. Part of the explanation traces back to that same von Willebrand factor mentioned earlier. People with type A blood generally carry higher natural levels of it than people with type O blood. When the virus damaged the lining of blood vessels, higher levels of this clotting factor were linked to more dangerous complications, including strokes, kidney damage, and dangerous clots in the lungs. People with O blood, carrying naturally lower levels of this protein, appeared to have some built-in protection against the most severe versions of these complications. Nobody designed this protection in a lab. It came from a blood configuration that existed long before this virus, or any modern virus, ever appeared on the planet. There is something worth sitting with here. Your immune protections were not built through your own life experience. They were not learned through years of exposure to sickness. They were handed to you already assembled, encoded in the DNA passed down from your parents, who received it from their parents, in an unbroken chain stretching back further than any written record. Every defense your blood carries represents a battle that someone in your ancestral line survived long before you were born. There's another layer to this story that rarely gets mentioned, and it involves the digestive system. Some research has looked at how blood type may influence the way the gut lining interacts with certain bacteria, including the bacteria responsible for many stomach ulcers. People with O blood appear to have digestive tissue that certain strains of this bacteria can latch onto more easily, which may help explain the higher ulcer risk mentioned earlier. It is a good reminder that biology rarely hands out a clean, one-sided advantage. The same base structure that helps fight off a deadly blood parasite can also make a different tissue slightly more vulnerable somewhere else in the body. Evolution does not aim for perfection. It aims for whatever combination of trade-offs keeps enough people alive long enough to raise the next generation. There's also growing interest in how blood type connects to the body's stress response and inflammation levels, though this area of research is newer and less settled than the cardiovascular findings. Some studies have suggested that people with O blood may produce lower baseline levels of certain inflammatory markers compared to people with A blood, which could tie back into the same clotting and vascular protections discussed earlier. Scientists are still working out exactly how far this connection reaches, and it would be premature to treat every claim in this space as settled fact. What is clear is that the differences between blood types go far beyond simple donor compatibility, reaching into how the immune system calibrates its everyday response to the world. It also helps to understand exactly how rare it is for scientists to get a real look at ancient blood type genetics at all. DNA degrades over time, and the specific genetic regions that control blood type are not always easy to recover from old, damaged bone samples. Every ancient genome that gets successfully read and analyzed for blood type markers represents a huge amount of careful laboratory work, often involving specialized techniques to avoid contamination from modern DNA. That is part of why the recent wave of ancient DNA blood studies feels so significant. Researchers are not just adding footnotes to old theories, they are filling in a picture that was almost completely blank a generation ago. The scale of O blood today is enormous. Roughly a third of the global population carries type O positive blood, making it the single most common blood type on the planet. In some parts of the world, that number climbs even higher. Nearly the entire population of Central and South America carries O positive blood, a pattern that traces directly back to the small groups of people who crossed from Asia into the Americas during the last ice age, somewhere between 15,000 and 20,000 years ago, through a land route across what we now call the Bering Strait. These were tiny groups facing extreme cold, unfamiliar diseases, and total isolation from the rest of humanity. Whatever selective pressures shaped their survival during that migration pushed their descendants toward an almost universal O blood type. That is not chance. That is the genetic fingerprint left behind by extreme survival pressure. O negative deserves a mention too, since it plays such a critical role in modern medicine. It makes up close to 37% of people worldwide and can be given to patients of any Rh type in an emergency, which makes it absolutely essential in hospitals. And here lies a strange paradox. O blood is both the most common type and the type hospitals struggle hardest to keep in stock. because emergency rooms rely on it constantly for patients who need blood before there is time to run a full match. Hospitals burn through O blood faster than donors can replace it. In a very real sense, when a hospital saves a life using O blood in an emergency, it is leaning on the oldest, most tested immune architecture in the entire human genetic record to get the job done. It is also worth pointing out how much blood type research has been reshaped by better technology in just the last few years. Older studies often relied on small sample sizes, limited to whichever population happened to be easiest for researchers to study at the time. Modern genetic sequencing has changed that completely. Scientists can now compare enormous datasets pulled from hospitals, biobanks, and research databases spanning many countries and ethnic backgrounds at once. That shift has made blood type findings far more reliable than they used to be, and it is a big reason why so many new discoveries have piled up in just the past 2 or 3 years, rather than being spread thin across decades. Blood donation itself is another place where this ancient biology quietly shapes modern life. Every time someone donates O-negative blood, they are supplying the one blood type that can be given safely to almost any patient in an emergency, regardless of the recipient's own blood type. That universal compatibility is not a coincidence of modern chemistry. It comes directly from the simple, unmodified molecular structure sitting on the surface of O blood cells. The same base structure that made this blood type useful to your ancestors tens of thousands of years before hospitals or blood banks existed. In a strange way, every emergency transfusion happening in a hospital tonight is powered by a molecular design that predates human civilization itself. Looking forward, the research happening right now is only going to deepen this story. Scientists working on enzyme-based blood conversion are getting closer to reliably transforming other blood types into O, essentially trying to recreate at an industrial scale what O-positive bodies have been doing naturally for tens of thousands of years. There is something almost humbling about that. With every advanced tool modern biology has, from gene editing to next-generation sequencing, the direction researchers are pushing toward is not something brand new. It is the original template that evolution produced first, long before recorded history began. A massive 2026 study analyzing ancient human DNA from more than 15,000 individuals found that human evolution has actually sped up over just the last 10,000 years, with clear evidence of natural selection acting on genes tied to immunity, skin tone, behavior, and more. 10,000 years might sound like a long time, but in evolutionary terms, it is incredibly recent. That is the window when agriculture began, cities formed, populations grew rapidly, and new diseases emerged alongside dense human settlements. The immune systems being shaped during that period, including the blood type patterns still active today, were responding in real time to a changing world. You are a living result of that ongoing process. Well, what does all of this actually mean for you, practically? If you carry O-positive blood, it means your blood type is worth understanding as more than a line on a hospital form. The cardiovascular advantages, the specific disease resistances, the particular vulnerabilities, none of that is folklore. It is measurable biology, now confirmed through modern genetic tools that did not exist even a decade ago. As personalized medicine keeps advancing and genetic testing keeps getting cheaper and more common, your blood type is likely to be treated as one meaningful piece within a much larger picture of your overall genetic story. And there is something else worth remembering. Something that goes beyond lab data. You're not the first person to carry this blood, and you will not be the last. You are simply the newest link in a chain of carriers that stretches back further than any human civilization, further back than written language itself. Every person before you who shared this blood type and survived a famine, a plague, or a brutal winter passed something forward, not a memory, but a working biological system, quietly doing its job inside you right now, mostly without you ever noticing. It is also worth remembering that none of this research is meant to replace real medical advice. Blood type can point to general patterns of risk and resistance across large populations, but it does not predict what will happen to any single person. Diet, environment, exercise, sleep, and everyday habits still play a massive role in health outcomes, no matter what letter appears on your blood test results. The value of this research is not in fortune-telling. It is in understanding, on a much deeper level, why certain patterns of disease and resistance show up so consistently in people who share your blood type, and why those patterns trace back so clearly to specific chapters of human history. The pace of discovery in this field is not slowing down. New blood group systems are still being identified. New links between blood type and disease are still being uncovered. What scientists understand about O-positive blood today is already far more advanced than what was known just 10 years ago, and what gets discovered over the next 10 years will likely go even further, possibly reaching into areas like how blood type interacts with drug response or long-term cognitive health. For now, here is what the evidence actually shows. If you carry O-positive blood, you are carrying one of the oldest, most extensively tested biological systems in the entire human story. It helped your ancestors survive some of the harshest conditions our species has ever faced, and it is still working inside you today, quietly, constantly, mostly unnoticed. The full picture is still being written, and there's a good chance we have only started to understand what that ancient code inside you is truly capable of.